Rachel, I am so excited to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I know. I'm so excited we finally get to sit down and have this conversation about your book. It has been such a gift to me to get to walk alongside you in this journey. Our books come out about a month before one another. Yours comes out in March, mine in April. And so it's just been such a beautiful thing to get to walk through each phase of this process together. And it's just such a testament to just God's faithfulness in the midst of walking out our calling. And so I'm so excited to get to chat about Image Restored today. I think this message matters so much to us in this season as women and as women who are just trying to be faithful in our calling and in our families. And I think this area can be such a stronghold in our lives. I know it has been for me in many seasons of my life. And I just love sort of the foundation that you lay at the beginning of the book. You talk about just this inside out approach to body image. And so as we get started, I would love for you to share a little bit about your own journey and why sharing this inside out approach is so important to you.
Rebecca, I can't help but think, even when you're just sitting here talking about our calling and, your listeners don't know this, but hopefully they can come check it out. I had you on my show to talk about your message, and we did just sit and talk about all calling related things. And if I'm completely honest, and this is probably going to be news to you, whenever I set out to write a book, I did not anticipate my first book was going to be on body image. Because to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of being in the front lines of this message. Like it's kind of, especially something that I've wrestled out myself so much. And to have the Lord speak to me and just say, no, this is the message I want you to do, because it's the message of the thing that would have held me back from pursuing callings, and not just body image. The cool thing about this book is after I wrote it, I realized, it is a book on body image, but it's even a step deeper than that. It's just image of this image, that goes so much deeper than body. And so back to your question though, about that inside out approach, briefly about my story, we all have a story. That's the thing. Like, that's my favorite part about getting to know people. Everybody has a story. And I hope the listeners, as I share just a few highlights of my story, they can kind of think on their story and go, oh yeah, oh wow, I didn't experience that, but I did experience this, because none of us have the same story, right? But we can all look at how that story shaped who we are today and what we do with that story. And so, yeah, I grew up a little overweight as a kid. And, in high school, I played basketball, and I put that in air quotes because I was not any good at it, but all my friends were on the team and I enjoyed being on the team with them. So I played with them. But I had a weird hip thing happen when I was 14 years old. It was just a very abnormal growth thing. And actually the doctors kind of couldn't figure out what was happening. And they told me, you're probably not gonna be able to have kids, which, by the way, that's a miracle too. I do have 3 children. And their answer to me was, hey, we really can't figure out what's going on with you, but we do know this: you need to stop playing basketball and you need to lose weight. But they didn't tell me how to lose weight or anything. And so I just kind of on my own stopped drinking sodas and candy bars, and weight fell off for like the first and only time ever in my life. I dropped like 30 pounds in a month. And so in that particular season, I went from just being a little unseen and not knowing who I was, and then all of a sudden was getting some attention because I'd lost some weight. And in that season, the enemy really just deposited a lie in my heart that, man, your worth is really just completely wrapped up in what people think of you, not just your appearance, but in so many ways. And so I did. I spent several years striving and hustling, and that I was so consumed. I would go between these two lands of obsession and neglect. And that was just all my time and energy was spent on. And just really, just was very obsessed. And most people didn't even know was the other thing. This was very a secret thing just between myself. And I had a few friends who would kind of, we knew a little bit about what was going on with each other because we had same types of behaviors. And so my passion, that's my personal, my freedom journey. We don't have time to go completely into that because I don't want to spend the whole time talking about me. But it was after I got married and was pregnant with our second daughter that the Lord really began to do a work in my heart and teach me a different way of doing things. And so when I say an inside out approach, the world and the culture we live in teaches us, hey, if you do behavior modification, if you change the outside of yourself first, then internally you're going to be so happy and you're going to finally feel good in your skin and you're going to, all these things. And I just take a different approach because I believe that the only thing that's going to be the same now versus 20 years, 100 years is God's word. That's the only thing that's not going to change. And so when I started my own personal freedom journey, I started with God's word. And that's what I'm doing with this message and just bringing as many people with me who would like to take the journey.
Yeah, it's so good. And I'm thinking of my own story in that. And you and I talked a little bit about my running story and your marathon story and what God has taught us through those experiences, and a little bit of the struggle that came in that with me as well was running was an idol to me for many years. And so I would train for a marathon or some crazy race and I'd hit that goal. And then the next Monday, it was never enough for me. Right. And so the Lord and I have been on this journey over the last few years as well of really seeing that idolatry and like how that played out and impacted just so many areas of my life and really transforming my heart of like, man, you are more than a number on a scale or the gene size that you can fit into or not fit into in this season. And so just this heart transformation and remembering those truths that we know in God's word is just so important as we think about just this topic that matters so much to us. And I love how you've organized the book. You've organized it into different sections based on the Image Restored blueprint. And I would love for you to just give us a little bit of a taste of that. When I ask a question like this, I always say the goal is that you go grab the book and that you walk through this material with Rachael. But I'd love for you to just give us a taste of how the book is laid out.
I love that you Rebecca brought up the idolatry piece, because if I had written this book, 7 years ago, I first started getting asked to speak on this, like just at my local church and things. And the first thing that God's taught me initially was about idols in this area. And I dedicated a chapter to it. And I admit that most people are going to be mad at me about that chapter. I get it. Like, you're not going to be my best friend at the end of that chapter, but it's stuff that we need to address. And while that's a needed topic, the beauty in the Lord's timing of when I wrote the book is so powerful, because I, fast forward a few years, ended up going back to graduate school and became a licensed counselor. And so now I have sat with lots of women. So I don't just have my own personal, but then I've sat with a lot of women who have walked through just some different, things with their body image. And it opened my eyes to, there's so many layers here. And God just began to really teach me. And I'm so thankful he did for my own personal journey, but then also just for helping other people, that I like to view body image kind of like grief, and have you ever heard that with grief, it's not linear, even though we all wish it was, and we wish there was a formula, it's just not. And it comes in layers, and it's okay. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, you're like, oh, okay, you're peeling back a new layer. And so when I sat down to write a book on body image, at first I was just going, Lord, how do I hit all these layers? I mean, what do we do here? And we happened to be building our first home at the time, and we'd met with our architect who designed our house for us. And I was just looking at all these different, like all the different pieces that she's showing us. And she's talking about the foundation, and she's talking about the different things. And I'm going, that's how I do it. It's, I'm like, it's, we have got to, it's going to be a process. And we're going to take it one step at a time. And each layer just deals with different areas of our heart that the Lord wants to bring up. And I even suspect that in my heart for the book is that women years from now, the first time they read it, there might be a chapter that they're kind of like, okay, I mean, that chapter's fine. Like maybe didn't completely resonate with that chapter or didn't go deep. And then years from now, the Lord will go, I actually want you to reread chapter 8. Like, now's the time. We're dealing with that right now. And I hope this is encouraging, because I know the thing that would trip me up with my own body image healing was I would think, oh, good, I've got freedom here. And then I'd enter a new season or something new would happen, and I would feel like, wait, I just took a couple steps back. I guess I didn't get freedom. Yeah. Oh, man, that was fake freedom. And like, no, it was freedom. It just, we're going into a new layer. We're going into a it's a journey. Even me sitting here, I'm about to release a book on body image, and I still have days where I'm in the struggle bus with everybody.
Yeah.
And so I also like to be clear about that. I'm like, hey, freedom does not look like that there's not going to be times that are hard or a struggle, but it looks like, hey, we have tools now. We have hope now, and we know how to
Yeah.
overcome.
Yeah. Where are we turning in the midst of when we're triggered by that again, or we take a step back or whatever? I think that that's freeing in itself of, even sometimes I think we can experience freedom in an area or feel like, man, I'm so thankful that God healed this place in my heart. And then there's almost this fear of like, I don't ever want to step back into, those grave clothes or those areas where we feel like God has healed us. But the reality is we are on this side of heaven and we live in a sin-stained world where we are imperfectly following Jesus at every turn. And the beauty is we get to turn to him in those moments of desperation of saying, gosh, I thought I was past this. Lord, there's still something in my heart that I want you to transform. And so I think that's freeing in itself, knowing that this is a lifelong journey with the Lord. And so I love that. And along those same lines, there's so many lies that we believe about our bodies based off what the world would teach us or tell us. And you talk so much in the book about, surrendering these lies to God and turning towards truth in those moments when we're really struggling. So for the woman who's coming to this conversation so discouraged in her body today, how would you want to encourage her in what it looks like to begin to surrender those lies to God?
Well, step one in anything is awareness. And then exactly like you said, surrender. And so surrender looks like, if you think about prisoner of war or somebody who's like, they put their hands up, right? And they're like, I surrender, and they're showing the person that's, that is arresting them or taking them hostage, like, hey, I'm not holding anything back here. I don't have any weapons. I don't have anything here. And I feel like it's a heart posture towards God. It's literally just saying, Lord, I'm tired from trying to do this in my own strength. I haven't gotten very far, and I don't want to keep doing this in my own strength. I surrender this area to you. And when we just surrender, I have that visual of just, have you ever seen somebody surrender? They put their hands up and they are just showing, hey, first of all, I submit. And, I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to prove. I've got nothing up my sleeve. And I feel like that's us too, is us just saying to the Lord, turning our heart towards him and just softening our heart and saying, Lord, my hands are thrown up in the air, praising you and recognizing that I don't want to keep doing this in my own strength. I've tried it and it's not working and it's heavy and burdensome, and I surrender and I want you into this area. And the Lord is so sweet and kind and gentle in his approach with us, that he not only obviously accepts our surrender, but he also walks alongside us and just takes it one step at a time with us, and does, as we ask him. That's what I love about prayers like, Lord, reveal lies, in my heart. Oh, he loves to answer those kinds of things immediately, or Lord, soften my heart, or stuff like that. Those are the kinds of prayers I think just delight the Lord when we come to him and say those things.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that in the book, there's such a practical way to walk through that process of surrendering those to God and pointing ourselves towards truth in these areas. And so as people walk through the material, I think that's a really special part about this message. And mine's kind of the same way. So I love when books are like this, and it's not just let's like read a book and like set it on a shelf, but it's a very real practical, okay, let's process what God is showing you as we walk through this together. So I love that. And there's sections throughout the book that you call therapist thoughts that are so, so good. And there's one that you share that just really caught my eye. So I want to read this for us. It's a quote from Dr. Linda Hoover, and it says, "Have you ever considered how the original sin involved food? Unlike other addictions, food cannot simply be avoided, not if we hope to live. What a vicious hijack by the enemy to take something God intended to be a blessing and turn it into a source of struggle and shame." So I would just love to hear you just encourage listeners in that area a little bit. I've never thought about, that part of Genesis in that way, and how even today food can be a source of struggle and shame.
Yeah, I loved this quote too if you read my book, you're going to see Dr. Linda Hoover's name throughout the book quite a bit. She was a professor of mine in graduate school who I just still to this day, she's a mentor, very, very wise. And that was in that therapist thought is in chapter 2, because that was where I did share the story of how I briefly mentioned earlier, I got off candy bars and soda and lost all that weight. And initially, it was a really good thing. I mean, my health improved, right? Like, yes, I had weight
Sure.
loss that was visible to the eye, but also my health improved. My hip problem went away. Like, I I got healing through getting rid of just some stuff that wasn't the best for me to consume. So that should have been a really good moment in my life. And it was for a minute, but then the enemy came in and hijacked, right? Just like he did,
Yeah.
in the garden of, oh, I see this good thing. Because here's the deal about the enemy. He has no new tricks up his sleeve. So all he can do is come at the good things that God has created and try to put a spin on it and try to say, oh, this
Yeah.
is bad. Like even the mere fact that we call food, for example, if somebody, eats junk food for the day, a common phrase we'll hear is, oh, I've been so bad today. What in the world? We're,
Yeah.
we're equating our morality and our character with food? Really? That's a hijack. Like
Yeah.
no, God never intended for food to be something that we get to determine our character and our worth off of. That's a hijack of something that he meant to be nourishing and good and life-giving. And now all of a sudden we're labeling it good versus bad.
So good. So, so good. Well, another area that I think is really just important to think through that you talk about in the book, and I love your perspective just with what you do coming to this topic. And you talk about big T and little t traumas and how you've seen the power of no longer avoiding these areas, but pursuing healing in those areas. And so I would just love for you to share just your wisdom in that area.
Absolutely. Before I share how that affects body image, I never like to assume people know what I mean when I say big T versus
Yes.
little t trauma. So I'm just going to briefly
Yep.
explain the difference. And so a big T trauma is something everybody could look at and go, whoa, that was traumatic. A really tragic car accident where you almost lost your life. That's a big T trauma. So those types of things where everybody goes, oh man, I can see that. And then little T traumas are more, they can be a little more sneaky and we can dismiss them a little bit more. But when they stack up, especially if it's the same core message over the years, they can be equally as debilitating as a big T trauma. I liken it to whenever I went through EMDR training, which just stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and it's just a form of trauma therapy. And when you look at all these little T traumas, for example, say you were in the third grade and you tried to answer a question in class and you got it wrong and everybody laughed. And so maybe a core message you received in that moment was, I'm dumb, I shouldn't speak up.
Yeah.
Those are things you probably didn't go home and tell your mom about. You probably just it just internalized it. And at first it's not a big deal, but when you get that same core message stacked over time of, oh, dumb, I shouldn't speak up. Well, it's like stacking stones. Have you ever been out hiking and you see a stone tower happening? And every time somebody comes by, they add another stone, they add another stone, add another stone. And before too long, you have this really big tower. And so when I find women are stuck in an area, I usually want to go after, okay, where did this start? Because the good news is if we can find where it originated, we can kind of get that stone tower to come crashing down. If we can pull out the bottom stone that's holding it all together, we're exposing the enemy, right? Exposing the lies that crept in that time and just rewiring things. And so that's why to me it was important to recognize that in body image this is happening, because with big T traumas in body image, for example, any kind of sexual abuse or anything like that, or even just physical things, if you did go through something like a car accident or just anything that was traumatic in your body, it is going to affect your body image. I mean, that really isn't rocket science. It just is. And I don't hear that talked about very much. Mm-hmm. But then also, again, with the little T traumas, yeah, if you had those messages, I know for me, we do something in the book called a body image timeline. And my core message on my body image timeline is just that my worth is in my appearance. Like that was just something from a little young age that I just had those little T traumas stacked. And so the Lord had to go in and just pull that out, pull that bottom stone out and say, yeah, that's not true. And we're not going to be in agreement with that anymore. So that was why it was important to me to bring that topic into the book.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's so important. Well, as we kind of bring this conversation to a close, I wonder, as you think back on all God has brought you through, originally not wanting to be the body image girl, and the transformation that's happened in you and in the future lives of your readers through this process of writing this message. I wonder, is there anything you think back on and you would say, okay, this is what I would leave with people who feel discouraged in their body today? Yeah, that's so good. Well, for listeners who are coming to this episode today is launch day. So you can go grab the book wherever you like to buy books. And is there anything that you would want to share in terms of how they can connect with you and all the things after this episode? Perfect. Awesome. Well, there is a question that I love to ask all the guests that come on Radical Radiance. And it goes back to this verse that God really put on my heart when I named the podcast Radical Radiance, which is Psalm 34:5. It says, those who look to him are radiant and their faces shall never be ashamed. And so the question I love asking is, what about Jesus makes you radiant? Yeah, I love that. So good. Well, I am so incredibly thankful for you, and just that God allowed our paths to cross in this season. It's been so sweet to, again, get to walk alongside each other as we do this together. And so I'm so excited that Image Restored is out in the world, and I can't wait for listeners to go pick it up. So thank you so much for being my guest today.